Here to start your day the right way. It's Marv and Rauh in the morning.
Yes, wake up. It's Marv and Rauh in the morning, and welcome on into really the first episode of this brand new venture right here. Exciting stuff. Hot takes to start right here. Grab your coffee, grab your caffeine, whatever you need. Christian Rauh, Nick Marovets here. Marv and Rauh in the morning every weekday, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern, Friday, 7 to 8 Eastern time. We're bringing you the news, bringing you hot takes and big stories in all of sports. Nick, man, what a weekend of sports. College football playoffs was crazy. Coaching carousel, insane. And then we have the changing of the guard when it comes to football and the NFL, and the playoff picture there is insane as well. And of course, when it comes to college basketball, there's no less drama as well. A lot of stuff to dig into in this episode. If you haven't already, if you're brand new to this is a brand new channel, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Really appreciate that. We are starting off strong. We will be here every single weekday from here on out, right here on In the Morning with Marv and Rauh. And Nick, let's dive right into it. There's a lot of stuff to talk about today. So let's get into the Power Hour. BYU and Notre Dame, not in the college football playoffs. I think that's the first thing to get to in this one. The college football playoffs was announced, and no BYU. No Notre Dame. BYU wasn't even on the graphics when the ESPN was talking about them after losing to Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game. Ohio State only moves down one spot after losing to Indiana. Alabama doesn't move at all. We'll get to Alabama in a little bit, but let's start with BYU first before we dig into Notre Dame. The fact that they weren't even talked about at all. What do you think about that, Nick?
BYU was just completely disrespected through this entire process. There were so many times, leading up to the final selection day that they'd throw up Notre Dame, Miami, and who's that third team they were throwing on? It was it Bama? I think it was Bama that they were throwing up, and they just were completely they didn't even put BYU on the graphic. It was like, hey, these are teams 11, 12, and 14, by the way, or whatever it was, and they would just completely leave that out. I could not believe that, and as a fan of the Iowa State Cyclones from the Big 12, that's concerning because what does Iowa State look like if they go 11-1? Do they have to win a Big 12 title to move on into the 12-team playoff? And as far as Notre Dame goes, I just wanted to throw this point out there. I've heard a lot of people talking about, well, this is Notre Dame really getting payback for not being in a conference. If they get in a conference, look out. They're gonna light the world on fire. They're gonna make the playoffs. Well, what happened to BYU? Isn't that exactly what they did? Didn't they go from independent to the Big 12? Basically, what this is saying is just don't join the Big 12. This is a complete slap across the face for the Big 12 because the BYU Cougars, they look very good all season. They lose to one team. They didn't lose to two different teams. Yes, they have two losses. They lost to one team. I can't believe they didn't get any benefit of the doubt in this whole thing.
Yeah, and the team they lost to twice was the number 4 team in the country, according to the new college football playoff bracket that did get released. Here it is right here. This is what we're going to be looking at for the upcoming college football playoffs. As we mentioned, Alabama gets in. They're the 9 seed. They didn't move down after losing to Georgia, and they lost pretty handily against Georgia, just like BYU did against Texas Tech. Let's not say it was close games. Neither of them were, but I think you got to be consistent. If one team's going to lose mightily, you got to make the right moves. You got to move in the right direction. Alabama loses, and they still move to the 9 seed, going to Oklahoma. They're going to take down them. Oregon and JMU, and then you got Ole Miss and Tulane. You have Texas A&M and Miami. That'll be the first round. So 3 home sites for the SEC, 1 in Oregon. I like the fact that they got it right when it comes to not putting in the ACC champion, putting in JMU over Duke, because, of course, Duke was 7-5 heading into that college championship weekend. But then you can make that conversation going right back to did they get screwed over? Well, yes, Miami has the head-to-head win over Notre Dame. Don't get me wrong. That does count, and that should count. But I feel like when you headed in the championship weekend, both teams were on the couch. Notre Dame and Miami were both sitting on the couch. And before we got into the college football last selection Sunday, neither of them teams, or they get switched, I guess you could say. Miami takes over. Notre Dame gets dropped. And again, the head-to-head should matter. But it feels like the only reason they made that move is because they had to get an ACC team in. And it just seems like to me, that's just not justified.
It just, whenever the CFP committee talks, whoever it is that they have as the head, I just can't listen. It is basically it's a bunch of rubbish. Whatever they're spewing out, it's whatever they have to say to make whatever they picked look good. They just don't have the reasoning. Even I was actually impressed Reese Davis pushed as hard as he did when it came to the whole BYU Notre Dame Miami situation. He pushed pretty hard, and the committee was pretty much like, we just did this because it's what we did. Like, you're going to have to get over it. And I thought that was absolutely ludicrous. When you look at the bracket, which game are you most excited for? Because I don't know if like you want to make predictions for champions right away. I guess I'm curious how you feel about those like two G6 schools in Tulane and JMU getting in is very interesting. I'm curious where your attention goes first.
Yeah, well, Tulane and Ole Miss already played this season, and it was a blowout. So, I mean, just seeing, the fact that you're going to get Ole Miss versus John Summerall, who's going to be the head coach of Florida, is going to be interesting. Let's see if, obviously, Tulane can make any type of game out of that, because that wasn't the case earlier this season. It'd be cool to see JMU make some sort of splash in Eugene. I don't feel very confident in that one. I just glad that they got, the nod, because I think it was deserved to put two G6s in there. I don't think the committee likes that. And I think that if each team winds up getting blown up and blown out, that's going to be a really big problem for the future conversations this offseason. I'd probably have to point at Texas A&M and Miami for the one game of the first weekend that I'm most excited about. Do not like the time. This is the noon game on the Saturday. This one should be the primetime game. Both of the G6 teams follow. So I think it's bad timing and bad decisions by the schedule makers. But I think out of the four games, I should say, that is the one I'm most excited about. Texas A&M offensive coordinator Colin Klein about the new head coach at Kansas State. Miami, obviously, they're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. Everybody says they shouldn't deserve to be there, and they're going to be in that one. And Texas A&M, you got to remember, they were seen as a first-round bye team until they lost their only game of the season against Texas. So I do think that one's going to be the most exciting game. Speaking of this entire postseason play, we talk about Notre Dame, the fact that they didn't make it in there. Now they're not going to be in a bowl game either. They decided to step out. These two teams were supposed to take on each other in the Pop-Tart Bowl, which is the coolest bowl, might I add. They added 6 dancing Pop-Tarts this year. So, I mean,
they've got teams this year.
This was absolutely the year.
They had Team Sprinkles and Swirls or whatever it was. The Pop-Tarts Bowl is doing bowls right. And I actually just talked about this today. I think it was that this aired. Notre Dame leaving the bowl situation is not the same as a few other teams that are saying, no, we don't actually invite or to accept this invitation. Teams like Kansas State and Iowa State, new head coaches, and for Iowa State specifically, gutted because your head coach went to a different program. You have basically no coaching staff left. All the players are going to leave, and Iowa State was extremely injured. Kansas State, new head coach, is going to be turnover. Like, I get it. Notre Dame, literally just salty they didn't get into the playoffs. I could not believe. I was literally shocked that they were like, oh, we're not going to get in? Well, then what's the point of even playing these bowl games? I think this sets a horrible precedent for what the college football playoff and those who are just snubbed looks like for the next few years. I don't think this was the right play at all. I am shocked that they're allowed to do this. And then you look at next season and what Notre Dame has done and the MOU to be able to get in if they're in the top 12. Like, the whole thing with Notre Dame right now is it just feels wrong, man. I don't know. Like, it just feels like everything about this is almost like pick me. I hate it.
Yeah, they made a statement that came out yesterday on Sunday. It says, as a team, we decided to withdraw our names from consideration for a bowl game following the 2025 season. We appreciate all the support from our family and fans, and we're hoping to bring the 12th national title to South Bend in 2026. I feel like this was definitely a push for leverage in the offseason when talking about, obviously, college football playoff expansion and whatnot. Of course, this begs the question and asks the question, what is Notre Dame's relationship with the ACC going to do? The ACC was completely against Notre Dame going in. They were obviously rooting against them to get Miami into the fold. Of course, Notre Dame is not in the ACC conference, but they have a very close relationship with them being an independent team, and you always see them playing each other. Wonder if that changes over the next couple of years. And then it makes you wonder, does Notre Dame think about joining an actual conference? Did you actually make that decision? But you mentioned it earlier, BYU going in the Big 12 and having, an 11-1 record heading into championship weekend still gets him left out of the mix. A lot of stuff, crazy stuff to talk about. We're going to dive more into college football playoffs in just a minute, but I think we need to switch over and change sides and talk about the coaching carousel that happened this weekend. And it got crazy, and it continues to be crazy. There are so many different coaching changes happening in college football this year, period. In SEC, I think has 5 new coaches. Biggest one, of course, happening over in Ames, Iowa over this weekend. And Matt Campbell decides to leave Iowa State, head over to Penn State. Penn State finally figures out their head coaching search. Takes 57 days before their coaching search is figured out. And then for the record, 57 minutes later, Iowa State goes ahead and hires their new coach in Jimmy Rogers. So 10 years of Matt Campbell at Iowa State only lasts about 10 blinks of an eye before they wind up replacing him. But Matt Campbell going to Penn State. Is this the right move, going from James Franklin to Matt Campbell to see if they can be a championship contender against Ohio State, Michigan, all those teams? Indiana, let's not forget about them. Big Ten with Matt Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious when you look at my background who I root for, right? So I have a strong connection to Matt Campbell. I would say that this was the right hire by Penn State. I would, and honestly, the way that the whole thing shook down for Penn State with how long it took. The best way that this got put on the internet over the weekend was Penn State was that guy who struck out 15 times at the bar and then still went home with a 10 at 2:30 in the morning. Like, nice. How did that happen? How did they somehow walk away with Matt Campbell? And I think really this is a great opportunity for Matt Campbell to show what he's capable of, because how many years in a row have we talked about Matt Campbell and said, man, can you imagine this coach if he wasn't at old poverty Iowa State? I don't love that as an Iowa State fan, but I think it's a fair argument. Iowa State's certainly not the biggest school in the nation. Penn State, definitely up there. I mean, I've been to the Whiteout game. I've seen that stadium. It's unbelievable, the resources that Penn State has in comparison to Iowa State. I think this is a great opportunity for Matt Campbell to prove himself, really cement himself as one of the best coaches of all time. It's got a long ways to go, of course, but definitely an opportunity to open that door. And as far as Penn State goes, there was nobody else that they could have taken at that point in their coaching search. This was the right guy.
Yeah, James Franklin obviously moving on. He's now the head coach at Virginia Tech. He's bringing back old Penn State guys. Brent Pry, former head coach of Virginia Tech, also his defensive coordinator with Penn State, going to be back with him with the Hokies. And that's going to be interesting. But a lot of things that still are, I guess you could say, issues that happened with the James Franklin firing is their recruiting class. The 2026 recruiting class for Penn State is atrocious. And obviously there's probably going to be some Iowa State recruits that jump over the Penn State. But even if that happens, this recruiting class is still absolutely terrible. Last time I checked, they were in the 150 ranges, and that's unheard of for a Penn State team. I'm talking the Akron Zips are ahead of Penn State Nittany Lions when it comes to recruiting ranks. That should not happen in college football in this era, no matter what. If the head coach moves on, anything like that, if you are Penn State, if you are a team that is seen to be a college football playoff contender, you were in the Big 12 championship last year, you got yourself to the college football play. They won the Big 10 last year, right? So there is a lot of things to make you wonder. The biggest question for James Franklin was, hey, can you win the big game? Of course, that didn't happen. They wound up moving on from him. They fire him in the middle of the season after having a down start. A lot of other big schools had a down start as well. I mean, I'm going to go full disclosure here. I thought Penn State was a national championship caliber team heading into the season. I also thought Clemson was too. I was completely off this year. Don't get me wrong, but I didn't have firing James Franklin on my bingo card, let alone have Matt Campbell show up as the new head coach for Penn State. How long does it take for Matt Campbell to get Penn State back in the conversation? We mentioned Ohio State, obviously a tough team. Michigan's back on the rise, you can make the argument for, and Indiana doesn't seem like they're going anywhere. Of course, Oregon's still in the mix. Washington seems like a really tough team as well in the Big Ten. This is a tough conference, no doubt. How long does it take for Penn State to get back in college football playoff consideration?
Oh man, I'm gonna answer that in a second, but I just first wanted to mention you're exactly right. Penn State's at 155 right now for 24/7 Sports, with 2 4-star commits. And that is the entirety of their recruiting rankings. Unbelievable.
And Akron's above
I don't know if you've Central Arkansas at 150. If I showed you that logo, I can almost guarantee that you would not know who that was. I unbelievable. As far as Iowa State players, I believe their portal actually opens as we speak today. To my understanding, Iowa State players can jump into the portal and they'll have 15 days to do so. entirely sure how that works out because Quentin Taylor Jr. already did jump into the portal. But nonetheless, we should get some more news on that over the next few days. As far as Penn State getting back into the fold, John Haycock's going to come over with the 3-3-5. That's my only concern with this Penn State team right now. I don't know if their defense is elite enough in the Big Ten. I think Matt Campbell's a great head coach. He's going to build this great program over the next 2-3 years. His recruiting is unbelievable. John Haycock as DC, we saw him struggle at times with Iowa State and running the program that the style of defense he likes to run. Now, that being said, at the exact same time, somehow he turned the defense around this year with basically 2 defensive backs on the entire roster. So give him some credit. I say Penn State is back in the fold in probably 2-3 years. As far as the committee's concerned, I think they're going to get the benefit of the doubt as that big-time program. But as far as contending for a Big Ten championship, I give it at least probably 4.
You think Penn State fans can be patient enough for that? They weren't very patient with James Franklin this season. Of course, obviously, it's more than 3-4 years from them winning the big game. But again, you were in the Big Ten championship game just last year. You were in the college football playoffs just last year, and you don't finish the season, the expectations of being a national championship contender. I wasn't the only one, by the way. That was completely wrong. And you wind up firing James Franklin in the middle of the season with a huge buyout, might I add. $54 million, I think his buyout was. You think Penn State fans are going to be patient enough to let Matt Campbell, a guy that turned around Iowa State? Before Iowa State, they were 2-10, 3-9, all that good stuff. Took them 10 years to get them to be contention and win their first double-digit season last year in the program's history. How long is it going to take for Iowa State to finally say, if it takes them 2-3 years to get back to the mountaintops, okay, maybe this was the wrong decision?
I don't know for sure. I don't know a ton of Penn State fans, but I would just say this to them. If I had the opportunity to tell them something as kind of a guy who's been on the other side, I think you have to understand that that's what Matt Campbell did at Iowa State. And I think a lot of them realize they're getting into that here. Like, Matt Campbell has been known for rebuilding Iowa State. Like, it took him a while because Iowa State wasn't very good when he came over from Toledo, but he did that. And I think Penn State fans, if I were to tell them anything, it's literally trust the process. Now, you're going to have down years, you're going to have up years. Look at the 4-10 year or whatever it was after one of our best seasons in 2020, I think is when it was. You're going to have those years. You just got to trust Matt Campbell. The process is absolutely there. He left Iowa State in a much better place than he showed up. I don't know if they will. That's a great question. I'm pleading for them because I want Matt Campbell to succeed, but that was our main concern as Iowa State fans, was like, what is he doing over there? Is he going to get any leash? They're going to basically be firing or chanting for them to fire him after 2-3 years. I hope for his sake he can turn it around quickly. I don't know.
I've seen it in the comments. The biggest question we probably got to ask today on this Monday right here on Marv and Rauh in the morning. Is Penn State an East Coast team?
Absolutely. All right. I've made the drive myself. What do you think?
I love that. People get so mad about it when you talk about saying that it's like, it's not on the East Coast, it's 3-4 hours away. Well, in the eyes, if you're from the Midwest or from the West Coast and you're talking about something like Penn State, yeah, they're an East Coast team. There's no doubt about that. So if maybe we're just bad at looking at a map. I don't know.
I can see where someone would say like, oh, they're not technically next to a body of water, but they are way further east than Ames. Let's say that much.
Well, they might be next to a body of water, and it might be Penn State fans' tears if Matt Campbell doesn't figure things out in 3 to 4 years. Like you said, the patience, I think, is wearing really thin on Penn State trying to get themselves back to being a national championship contender. And I think that it was a wrong decision, personally. I think James Franklin is going to probably make Penn State pay. I don't think that's going to be on behalf of Matt Campbell's reasoning. I think he's going to do a good job. But I think James Franklin's going to quickly turn around Virginia Tech. I really do. We'll talk about that in the future and probably another episode down the road. James Franklin conversation has to happen. But I think he's going to really make them pay. That's just something that just sits in the back of my mind. Like, I don't know if that was the right decision. $54 million is a big risk for you to move on from a guy who just got you to the college football playoffs just last season.
Yeah, I mean, when that news came through, everyone I knew was like, I cannot believe that just happened. That was a shocker.
I agree completely. let's go back. Let's talk more about this college football playoffs because it's the big story right now. Selection Sunday happened yesterday, and one of the biggest things that was another shocker was Alabama sticks as the number 9 seed. I don't think I was expecting them to get taken out of the college football playoffs, although I think that you either, in my opinion, you either had to leave both Alabama and BYU in or take both Alabama and BYU out after losing their championship games the way that they did. And then you could have had the conversation of either both in or both out for both Alabama, BYU, and then Notre Dame, Miami. I think that would have made it a lot more cleaner. I think you would have had a lot less controversy, but I think the committee, aka ESPN, probably doesn't like the fact that there's no controversy and the fact that, folks like us are talking about it today. So there's probably a reason why they split it down the middle. But Alabama, being in the college football playoffs, the number 9 seed, they're going to go take on Oklahoma in the first round. To me, this doesn't make sense that they're sitting at the 9. They should at least dropped one position if they are going to stay in there at all, because you lost to Georgia pretty handily in the SEC championship. And yes, I know you won in Athens. You split the thing. There is a small difference with you splitting the series between Georgia and Alabama compared to BYU losing to Texas Tech twice. Right? Might I remind Alabama folks that you did lose to Florida State, but Alabama, do they deserve to be in the college football playoffs?
No, I think if you're asking me, and it really does come down to the bowl game situation or the conference championship situation. Bama lost that game 28-7. Do you know how many rushing yards they had?
Not a lot. I know that.
They had -3 rushing yards in that game. So
Yeah,
it's not like it was. It's you're exactly right. It wasn't a competitive game, and honestly, that touchdown that Alabama had just kind of felt fluky. That I did catch a little bit of that game. To me, this comes down to, Bama shouldn't have made it, but what are we doing with conference championship games? That's really where I land on this, because BYU, like we just talked about, an 11-1 team goes to their conference championship game and is penalized for losing. Now, if you're in the SEC, that doesn't happen, but I don't like the way that, like, you should at least get some benefit of the doubt for being the top 2 team from your conference. Like, I have a hard time believing, and I do love the Cinderella story. I have a hard time believing that JMU or Tulane is a better football team than BYU. I understand it's the way the format works, and I understand that by, like, all accounts, technically that's not really where the problem lies. It's just hard for me to believe. Like, what is the actual point of the playoff if we're like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the conference championship weekend needs to be revisited, and I think you need to have a new look at it. I was completely for, I should say, heading into this year when they talked about expanding this playoffs. When, of course, last year with the entire thing happening with teams losing in their conference championships, still staying in the SMU conversation, right? That kind of whole thing happened. If you look back a few years ago when it was the 14 playoff, I am old enough to remember Georgia losing in their SEC championship game as the number 1 seed. And they wound up moving down to the 6th seed and missing out completely of the 14 playoff.
I just want to add really quickly, that year, I would argue Georgia was snubbed worse than Florida State was.
Oh, yeah, you could definitely make that argument for sure, because especially if you're making this whole conversation. Georgia utilized that to, kick the crap out of Florida State. They utilized that to advocate for fixing the playoffs for the future. And that's what happened with, we shouldn't punish or reward conference champions. Well, you could say reward, but we shouldn't punish conference champions for losing their game, unless you're in the Big 12, of course, because of course BYU didn't make the college football playoffs. It's hard for you to make that kind of conversation or anything like that. But what I'm saying here is, I am now against conference championships. I used to be all for them. I used to be advocate for them, saying you need to fight for everything you possibly can. You need to make sure you can get those trophies for your conference matter. I don't know if they matter anymore. In this new realm of college athletics, in this new realm of college football, with the NIL, with the transfer portal, with people leaving bowl games, we're seeing as well. They're not making postseason football matter. It only matters if you make the 12-team playoff. And it doesn't matter if you won your championship. It doesn't matter if you're going to hold on to that. I mean, how many people remember who won the SEC championship game a couple of years ago, but you can remember who won the national championship, right? It's the 12 teams that matter right now. And if you miss that, then why would you compete in a bowl game? I think you have to move and I was so against this at the beginning of the season, but my mind has completely shifted. I think you have to move to, instead of having championship weekend, you do some sort of play-in tournament to get the right teams into that 12-team playoff or 14 or 16, whatever the expansion inevitably becomes, and move away from this and maybe get away from auto bids. Only get the 12, 14, 16 best teams in the country. And if that means you also move to a G6 only playoff tournament as well, you did it with FCS, maybe you do it G6. I think you solve a lot of problems. You're not going to get a lot of people happy with that on the money side, but you would certainly prove that you have the best teams battling for a national championship.
I agree with you. Let me just say this really quick. It will never happen because, for one, the money, and for two, they want people talking about it. They want us having this conversation. So, as much as I am 1,000,000% on the same page as you are, it just will never happen. And so, I did take a quick look at, like, how could this even be fixed? Like, the first thought I had was, let's move conference championship. Let's not move conference championship. Let's move the final ranking up a week. Okay, so then the conference championship is now literally not, it doesn't matter because the conference championship doesn't give you a bye anyway, right? That was last season. Then they shifted it so the top 4 teams just get a bye. I don't know if that's the right answer, but I don't think it matters either way. I think that the way that the committee looks at it is it's just an opportunity to do what they want. So then I was like, well, I think maybe the best thing we can do is get as close to the numbers as possible and literally just go by a formula and avoid this whole situation where they want an SEC team in. Greg Sankey's calling for 7 SEC schools in the 12-team playoff, over half. Alabama, I cannot give you a super good reason why they're in other than because of the logo on their helmet. So the closer we get to numbers, the closer we probably are to a more correct system. But then even so, we have this problem with the rest of college football where Notre Dame's going to drop out if their numbers aren't good enough. I think the problem is all of college football has shifted. Like, there is now this championship or literally bust mentality whereas 10, 15 years ago, you just kind of played. And if you lost a game, you were out of the championship hopes, but you got a really good bowl game and you got to play a full season and everyone got better at football and everyone came closer together on the team. And then you move on to next season. That's not how it works anymore.
Do you think one of the reasons they didn't drop in seeding, and this is something that I've been kind of pondering looking at the bracket over and over again. Let's pull the bracket up so I can talk about this conversation here. Do you think the reason they didn't drop in seeding is because they didn't want them to become the 10 seed and have to face Georgia potentially again in a game before the national championship game? Because we've already seen that game happen twice. The only way it happens twice is if it's in the national championship. Do you think they put them on the other side of the bracket on purpose, and that's why they didn't move them? You got to think those kind of conversations happen when it comes to the committee, when they're thinking about, well, we don't want to put them as the 10 seed because they can potentially take on Georgia again. And we don't want that. We've already seen that happen. I know that we're seeing Tulane and Ole Miss happen in the first round. We saw, happen in the regular season, but I don't think you could have changed that. I think with the conference championship, with the 11 and 12 seeds, I don't think you could have made that move any other way. But for Bama, you could have easily slid them to the 10 seed. It would have made a lot of sense, even with Miami above them because of them losing in the SEC championship game. But I think maybe they moved them over there so they could take on Oklahoma. Maybe do they have a good chance against Indiana? Do they have a good chance against Texas Tech if they run that? I mean, Alabama, you could have a better chance potentially to make the national championship now as a 9 seed.
I would, yeah. I mean, maybe. To answer your question, yes, I think that they did that on purpose. I think they kept them away from Georgia. But I question you with this one. Is that right? Is that the right play? Because on some level, they have played Georgia twice. Like, just if we're looking at this as like zoomed out as we possibly can, as disconnected as we can to prevent or to present the best product, wouldn't that be the right play? I'm just genuinely asking what your opinion is, because I think you could probably make an argument for both sides.
No, I think you're right. I think you generally put them in the right spot. You put them as a 10 seed. I personally think they should have been out. I think if
you're
going to put
first, and then if you're going to put them in.
Yeah, if you're going to put Miami and Alabama in, to me, it doesn't make sense. It should have been one or the other. It should have been Alabama and BYU, or it should have been Miami and Notre Dame. That was my mindset going into Selection Sunday. And the fact they went down the middle was just asking for us to do a segment on it. That's what really all they were asking for us to do and talk about it for the next week or 2 weeks, because we got Army Navy this week before we even start college football playoffs. And that's a whole different conversation. I love Army Navy game, but again, going back to trying to adapt to this new world of the college football playoffs, you have to wait 2 weeks for the first round, 3 weeks if you have a bye. We saw all teams with a bye lose their first game last year. Now they got to wait
All the
3
time
weeks.
off.
All that time off. Maybe we consider moving Army Navy to a different slot. Maybe I saw somebody say put it on the Friday of week 0 instead of at the end of the season. I don't know what I think about that, but I mean, starting the season Army Navy doesn't sound terrible. The weather would be different. I don't know if you'd want that. Army Navy game is one of my most favorite games of all the season. I mean, I make chili. I sit back. I chill. It's to me, it's good chili. It's good.
The
chili
chili's
too.
the right play. I like that.
It is. Oh, 100%. And I grew up in a military family. I am a military veteran. We used to go to the VFW and the American Legion as kids, and we'd have meatball subs, pulled pork sandwiches. I mean, you'd sit there, you'd watch the game, insane stuff. But I think you might have to maybe move on from changing the Army Navy game to a different time with this new college football playoffs. I really do. But either way, I digress. Let's move on. Let's talk NFL here. The Kansas City Chiefs. Wow. What about this? Losing on Sunday Night Football to the Houston Texans. And let's start with this. The Kansas City Chiefs are 6-7. They are no longer going to be able to be winning. Whoa, man, look at me. First episode, and I throw it out there. Golly, I wasn't even ready. Leave it for the youngster to do it. But no, look at this. They are 6-7. And look at the other teams that are also 6-7 in the AFC alone. The Baltimore Ravens at 6-7, the Miami Dolphins 6-7. If I told you on December 8th, 2025, that all three of these teams would have the same record, and it was 6-7, including the Miami Dolphins, what would you say?
I think I'd say, wait, are the Dolphins really good? Or if you told me it was 6-7, if you told me it was 6-7, I would be shocked. If you told me they all had the same record, I'd be like, wait, the Dolphins got good. I definitely would not have assumed that they dropped to that level. The Chiefs at 3rd in the AFC West. I had this tweet pop up. Patrick Mahomes is the first Chiefs quarterback to finish a game with no touchdown passes, 3 interceptions since Tyler Palko in week 12 of 2011. I mean, if you would have told me Patrick Mahomes is playing that poorly, I would have said, is he playing with one arm, like with one leg? What is going on to the Chiefs? I'm all here for it, honestly. As a Patriots fan, I'm going to be completely biased here and say that I am happy that the Chiefs dynasty is it's not necessarily over yet. I don't know if you were waiting to answer or ask me that question. I wouldn't say it's over yet. You can have a down year, but it's certainly fun to watch them fall a little bit after the reign that they went on a ridiculous run over the last 5 years.
Oh, yeah. And you could make the argument that maybe it was better than the Patriots dynasties, talking about your Patriots just, a decade beforehand. Patrick Mahomes, 160 yards passing, 3 interceptions, no touchdowns, as you mentioned. I mean, it was probably his worst game we've ever seen from Patrick Mahomes, at least, in this dynasty era. We talk about the Eras tour. There's a documentary for Taylor Swift coming out right now talking about the end of an Eras tour. Makes you wonder, is the end of the Eras tour, is this bonus feature for the documentary? I'm talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, the end of an era tour. Travis Kelce, only 1 reception for 8 yards. He had 5 targets. He ended the game with a couple bad drops. I mean, I think he had probably the biggest meme of the day, with him sitting on the sidelines, just looking absolutely defeated. But this is a team that now, according to heading into Sunday Night Football, Steve Kornacki was doing his thing on the board, talking his percentages and numbers as he always does. And I believe he said that this team now has only a 17% chance to make the postseason after going 6-7 in the first week of December. This is unheard of territory for the Chiefs. And when you look at them just losing to the Texans now 8-5. You look at these other records, things like that, they could truly miss the playoffs, and that'd be wild. When's the last time we've seen the Chiefs not be in the playoffs? And it's just a wild take. They're trying to go back to back to back, all that good stuff. They might not even make it to defend that opportunity.
Yeah, looking at the rest of their schedule, I just pulled it up. They've got the Chargers at home, then they'll take on the Titans on the road, the Broncos at home, and then the Raiders on the road. Couple of divisional foes to round out that schedule. Just based off my initial impression, I see them probably going 2-2 through those 4. And I don't think that is even going to be close to enough. That makes them what, 8 and
Yeah, they have to win out,
8 and
and they
9.
probably need actually some help as well.
Oh yeah, and the Broncos being at 11-2 is also, I mean, equally weird. That's not really what we're talking about today. But what about the Patriots and the Broncos being 11-2 going into
Wild.
this season? Nobody would have thought. Yeah, I mean, if the Chiefs do sneak into the playoffs, I'll ask you this: are you more or less scared of them than last season?
Well, yeah, it really makes you wonder, right? It kind of brings you back to, talking about Travis Kelce, talking about the other Kelce brother and Jason Kelce a few years back when the Eagles were acting as the underdogs. You remember that with
Yeah.
Chris Long wearing the dog mask on the TV and things like that, and they were kind of seen as this team. I don't know if the percentage of them making the playoffs was this low heading into December. But it makes you wonder, is this the script? Is this Rodgers' script right here to let Travis go out on a good note here? 6-7. They are currently 10th best in the AFC right now. They are tied for 9th with the Ravens and the Dolphins. They technically have the tiebreaker over Miami based on best win percentage in conference games because they're 3-5 compared to 3-6. Nothing crazy to shout about. But the Texans, the team that they just beat them, hold the final playoff spot right now. So they need some help. They need to win out and get lucky, because if they win out, they go 10-7. But if the Texans win 2 of their next 4 games, it basically eliminates the Chiefs already. They need a lot of help. They play the Chargers, you mentioned, as one of the games that could help them out. But they're going to miss the AFC West championship, or miss the AFC West division title for the first time in a very, very long time. The first time since 2015, the AFC West will have a new division title winner.
Wow.
First time in a decade.
I mean, that's insane. Just to put your mind around, like to wrap your mind around that. And I have been an active hate watcher of the Chiefs since they got even relatively decent. But it is definitely something that you take a look at, and you have to appreciate it on some level, right? I think a lot of, especially now removed from the dynasty, a lot of football fans can look at what the Patriots did and just say, wow, maybe they played in one of the worst divisions of all time, or maybe they just were that good. I don't know, but it's impressive what those two kind of dynasties have been able to do. Yeah, maybe the Chiefs are done. Maybe the Chiefs are having a down year. Actually, not maybe. They certainly are having a down year. But I'm curious, what do you think? Is their dynasty officially over? We got the question right here. I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't think it's over yet. They could come back and win a Super Bowl next year. And I think it would be back on.
No, I'm willing on our very first episode here to make a hot take. It's done. Stick a fork in them. Kansas City Chiefs dynasty is over. They're not making it back to the playoffs this year. That's not happening. And we're going to see some of these players move on. I think Travis Kelce retires at the end of the season. Mahomes, what he's doing right now, you have to think that he's got weapons around him. He's got all the things that he's had all his career, and it's just not working. I think it's time that, and it's just not against Mahomes. I think he's a great quarterback. He's probably going to be seen as the best quarterback of all time. I don't know if I agree with that necessarily, but he could definitely be seen as that. I think it's over. I think it's absolutely over, especially this year. They have the Chargers next week. The Chargers are trying to work themselves into a playoff bid. The Titans, Cam Ward is starting to shine a little bit, starting to show his ability. That's not a easy win like you thought about on the schedule anymore. Of course, the Broncos on Thursday night. You never know what happens on Thursday night with a division game. And then you end the season against the Raiders. Pete Carroll might be coaching for his job in year 1 at the very end of the season. So that is not a easy task whatsoever by any stretch of the imagination to get to the playoffs. So I'm going to say the dynasty's over, and I'm going to say there is no chance in hell that the Chiefs make it to the playoffs this year.
I don't think they make it to the playoffs this year, to be clear. I do think that this year is officially over, and I don't think their outlook is especially bright. I think that they're going to really, really struggle to bring this team back to life. I think, obviously I agree with you. Travis Kelce probably retires. I think they lose a couple weapons here and there. It would be crazy if Mahomes was not on the Chiefs. Like, that'd be like I could see that potentially happening if the Chiefs do kind of tank out over the next few years. But I'm not quite ready to call it over. I think that they can turn. I don't want them to, but I think that they're able to turn it around here. I mean, they were just in the Super Bowl last year.
I mean, how fast did the Patriots dynasty end? And it was just the Buffalo Bills that took over the division. Look at the AFC West right now. The Broncos are shining. The Chargers have hope. The Raiders are just the Raiders. The Raiders are like the Jets in the Patriots dynasty. They're just kind of sitting there right now. So, but either way,
2-11.
there are two teams battling for the Chiefs to take over that AFC West instead of just the Bills doing it for against the Patriots when their dynasty went over. So I think that they have way too much competition in their division to be seen as a dynasty team anymore. If they can find a way to overcome it next year, win the division with all their superstars declining, with the fact they probably will have a new tight end there that's not Travis Kelce. And if it's Noah Gray, I don't think that's good enough. You probably have to find a way to replace him. You have to bring in more weapons. You have to find a way to do that. Andy Reid, how many years does he have left? I think we're seeing the decline right here of the Chiefs. I think we should probably call it earlier than we see it because I think it's happening.
I don't hate that. I honestly don't hate that take. Like just looking at the outlook for the Chiefs, it's really not. It's not that bright. And I think if you're in my boat where it's not officially over yet, you're definitely giving the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt. I think if you're in Christian's boat here, like, hey, this is probably coming to an end. I think you're looking at it a lot more realistically. I think that there is not a lot to be hopeful for this Chiefs kingdom, which is tough.
Yeah. Speaking of coming to an end, let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are in trouble following Daniel Jones's injury. It's been announced on Monday morning that he has a ruptured Achilles. He will be done for the season. And this is a team that started off 7-1. I mean, talk about surprise teams. We thought the Broncos and Patriots were surprise teams. The Indianapolis Colts were the surprising team of the season for the first half of the year. But then their next 5 games, they've only won 4, or they've only won 1 of the last 5 games, losing 4 of the last 5. Their only win in the last 5 games was against the Atlanta Falcons, which they had to go to overtime to make that happen. And now they don't have Daniel Jones. Riley Leonard, starting the show off with a Notre Dame conversation. We're ending it, close to ending it, with a Notre Dame quarterback and Riley Leonard taking over the helm, it looks like, in Indianapolis. Who knows what happens with the future there? But my biggest question here is they started off the season so strong, 7-1. Now they are 8-5, 8-5.
Yeah.
And they no longer control their destiny in their own division, let alone the playoff race, after losing to Jacksonville 36-19. The rest of their schedule is insane, by the way. Every single one of the teams, let me just read it off to you. At Seattle versus San Francisco, back against the Jaguars, and then at Houston to finish off this season. I mean, that is a dreadful year. Do they even win another game this season? Are they out? Is there a chance that they finish the season 8-9 after starting 7-1? I mean, that seems actual plausible looking at the rest of the schedule.
I actually think that's pretty legit. And is it going to be Riley Leonard? That's the new guy without Danny Dimes.
Yeah, sounds like it. He's the one that replaced him yesterday. I
don't know if that's going to be enough. I'm going to be honest. And look, Jonathan Taylor is electric, but at some point, we all know how important the quarterback is. Like, we're not mincing words here. It's pretty cut and dry. I'm not saying Riley Leonard can't do it. He absolutely can. But I will also say Danny Dimes was the starter for a reason, and if Riley Leonard was better, he would have probably been starting all season long. So yeah, I that is one of the craziest collapses I've seen in recent memory. Obviously, injury did help that out, which you never want to see. A true collapse doesn't generally involve injury. So definitely feel for the Colts here. Do you think that they keep Danny Dimes then with this whole injury situation? And do they come back in a situation where they can actually make a push next year again? Can they start strong? Can they, play JT and get this thing rolling and actually build something there? Or do they move on? I got to give Irsay credit, right? Irsay is running the team the exact right way. What do you think she does here?
Yeah, interesting. I think one, they should keep Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes, and then 2, I think they have to, because remember all the first round picks they traded to get Sauce Gardner, right? So I don't think they have a future, at least this year in the draft, to go say, hey, let's go get a quarterback, unless you're going to go take another shot at the wind in the free agent market. But why do that if you have a guy like Daniel Jones who has proved he could be a quarterback for your team if he's healthy? I mean, we were 8 games into the season this year, Nick, and we were talking about Daniel Jones being in the MVP conversation, ? Like, that was that was a true narrative, and it wasn't just for fun. Like there was a legit narrative saying, has Daniel Jones, Indiana Jones, right now that he's back in Indianapolis, did he find the perfect spot? And other than him being, hurt this year, and this is his second injury, right? Did you also remember that he was dealing with a fractured fibula or something like that? What, that sounds so gruesome, and he played 2 games on it, like no issue, hairline fracture, something like that. And then of course this Achilles injury makes you wonder how much of the stress on that leg. I don't know if it was the same leg that does anything with the Achilles and the muscle, or if it's both just 2 separate injuries. I'm really not sure. I'm not a doctor, nor do I play one on TV. However, there's just it's interesting. It's absolutely interesting. Riley Leonard finished this game with 145 yards, 18 for 29 passing, did have a pick. But of course, you were trying to battle back and get yourself this win, 36-19 to the Colts. So some of those interceptions are just what it is. Jonathan Taylor, only 21 carries for 74 yards in this one. And it's makes you wonder if they're going to have enough to win, to get back. It's hard to beat a team twice in a year. That's why division teams play twice a year. Can they make a comeback against Jacksonville when they play in Indianapolis this year? They have that game. Seattle looks like an absolute gauntlet of a team right now, what they have been doing over the past couple weeks, especially in the second half. Last week or yesterday on the offensive side. The Niners are trying to get themselves into the playoffs. They have no issue dealing with injuries, and they find themselves into consideration. And then, of course, what we saw the Houston Texans do on Sunday Night Football against the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday. Those are your final 4 games. I mean, if you are trying to say, hey, we need to win at least 2 of them, put yourself in contention to go to 10-7, that's the exact same conversation that we are having about the Kansas City Chiefs. 10-7. Can you go 10-7, right? And make the playoffs? I don't think 10-7 is enough in the AFC to do that. You have to probably win 3 of your next 4 games. I mean, you're looking at Seattle, Jacksonville, San Francisco, and Houston. I just don't see a guy like Riley Leonard being able to win 3 of those 4 games. I just don't.
I don't think so either. I don't think this is mailed in territory for the Colts. Like, obviously, you're not going to give up on the season.
You don't have a first round pick. There's no reason to mail it in.
Right. Yeah. You gotta do what you can here, but it's going to be tough to come away with 3 out of 4 there. You just saying it. It's like, I don't know who you pick. Who's the one you lose to? Because all 4 of them look like a loss, or at least a probable loss. I did want to throw this out here really quick. It's not really super important, but I think it's kind of cool. You mentioned the broken fibula. The reason Jones was able to play is because of 2 of his teammates from college at Duke. They've developed this this technology. They call it Protect 3D, and it's some sort of carbon fiber, whatever. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm not even gonna act like I know. But the fact that he went back to his college buddies on his college team was like, hey, remember that thing that you guys were doing for the broken collarbone? I'm gonna need that on my leg. Did see a dip in production, but the fact that he was playing in an NFL game was absolutely shocking. Just to round out that conversation, I cannot believe the Colts fell off the way they did, but there's always next year. I think that they're in the right spot. I'd say they're actually, I would say they're in a better position than the Chiefs are.
Oh, I agree. Even though they don't have the draft capital, I agree, because they have a future. They have a running back. They have a defense. They have players that look like they can at least still continue on with a franchise. And if Daniel Jones is healthy next year, you could still add a couple pieces in free agency. You might not have a draft pick, but if you add a couple pieces in free agency, you build to the offensive line a little bit, maybe work on their trenches just a little bit better. This team is just fine. They started off 7-1, and then the wheels fell off a little bit, and that's exactly what happened. I think out of these 4 games left, I think you have to win 3 of them. And I think I'm even go farther than that. I think out of the 3 of the games, you have to win both of the division games against Jacksonville and Houston. The other 2 teams are against the other conference, against the NFC. They don't mean as much. Obviously, they help to overall record, but I think you can afford one of those games, either the Seahawks or the Niners, but you got to split that. So you got to win 3 of those, and you have to win the games against Jacksonville and Houston to even be considered. I think 11-6 gets you in. If you win the other 2 AFC games, it'll probably help you with a tiebreaker in conference records. But if you lose both of those, or even just one of them, that could hurt you the rest of the way.
Yeah, and I'm going to be honest. I don't think they beat both the Jags and the Texans. I just don't. it's hard to
Not with Riley
imagine
Leonard at your
with
quarterback.
Riley Leonard.
I loved watching Riley Leonard in the college football playoffs last year. I thought that was an epic way going to the national championship, all that stuff, you name it. But this is a rookie quarterback. I mean, we've seen crazier things. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but I just can't see it. I just can't see it happening. It would be a fun
It'd be
story to talk
sweet.
about, though, if they wound up. Imagine if they beat the Seahawks in Seattle this next Sunday. The narrative, how fast that would change if Riley Leonard just decided to, I don't know, throw 300 yards and 3 tutties or something like that.
Then it really becomes you just got to win these 2. And it's not just like any 2, like it is the 2 that you have to get, the Jags and Texans, but that's a much different ask than, hey, beat 2 of these or 3 of these 4 teams. That is something we'll probably talk about here at Marv and Rauh in the morning. That's an immediate put that in the show script.
Absolutely, for sure. There's a lot more storylines to talk about the NFL this week. Plenty of stuff to talk about. We mentioned, teams like the Miami Dolphins. What are they doing? Is there a chance they can make the playoffs after their crazy start? There is a chance. And John Gruden, the good old Grudens, brought that up weeks ago, saying, "Don't be surprised the Miami Dolphins are in the playoff hunt." And look what's happening. Insane. That guy needs to be coaching somewhere this next season. Hey, let's finish off. Let's switch the topics just a little bit to finish off this episode of Marv and Rauh in the morning. Who is the best team in college basketball this season? The reason I ask it, we're still waiting on the AP Top 25 to drop today. We're in the morning here, and the AP Top 25 comes out just a few hours later. So we could obviously be wrong. So we'll do a little bit of speculating here as we're discussing this show. But I think there are multiple teams that could be deserving of the number 1 ranking this week. And you look at a team of Iowa State who took down the number 1 team in Purdue this past weekend. You look at Michigan, what they've done. They were great in the Players Era tournament. What they took down Gonzaga. Gonzaga had a nice back. They came back and crushed Kentucky. Duke winning against Michigan State. Arizona taking down Auburn. I think the 4 that come to mind to me that would deserve the number 1 spot, if I was going to give it to it, would be Arizona, Duke, Michigan, or Iowa State. I don't think we get number 1 for Iowa State, but I think we see them make the biggest jump in the AP Top 25 poll this week.
The biggest jump is pretty bold, but I don't hate it. I was just looking through a few, kind of records. I've got KenPom. Yeah, they are. I think they're probably at 3 is my guess. But that routing of Purdue, if you weren't aware, was the largest margin of victory by the away team in Mackey Arena in non-conference play. And in then history. In history, non-conference play, because Indiana did whoop them a few years ago. That'd be in conference play. But Iowa State, out of conference opponent, biggest margin of victory as the away team in Mackey Arena. Unbelievable the way that Iowa State is playing right now, quite simply. And I've got KenPom up here. Michigan at 1, Iowa State 2, Gonzaga 3, Duke 4, Arizona 5. I don't feel so hot on Gonzaga, and I don't know if that's just something where Michigan is like so far and away. There are teams where they're way, 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 way up here at 1. That makes 2 look really, really bad. So there is that chance. But the way I see it is I think that top 5 probably goes Michigan, Duke, Iowa State, Arizona, Gonzaga. I could see Duke and Arizona getting flipped around. I don't think they give Iowa State the benefit of the doubt quite yet. And that's just because it's Iowa State and they haven't really played a ton of people. The one they did face was Purdue, and they made it very apparent what was going to happen in that game. But outside of that, who have they really played that is going to be looked at in a very shining light,
Yeah, if we're looking at eyes of the AP Top 25, I think the new number 1 is going to be Arizona. Actually, shocker there. Yeah, I do, because they're currently the number 2 team in the country. I think they just moved them up. I don't think Michigan jumps them. I don't think Duke jumps them, although I personally think both teams are better at the moment. I think Michigan might be the most complete team in college basketball right now. I think Iowa State has the opportunity to be right behind it. Duke looks really good as well. Cameron Boozer is an outstanding player. And then Arizona, I think, rounds out that top 4, the Mount Rushmore right now of the top 5s. Now I put Gonzaga at the number 5 team, at least in the best in the country. Of course, UConn, Kansas, some of these other teams definitely have the shining ability. The opportunity, think about this, for a potential Big 12 championship between Arizona and Iowa State. I mean, just the chills I get just thinking about the potential for that.
I mean, the Big 12, I think we can both agree the Big 12 is the best conference like for basketball. So the whole year should be just electric. You're going to get Iowa State, Houston, Iowa State, Kansas, Iowa State, Arizona, and then obviously all those teams will play each other as well. So I cannot wait to see how this conference slate unfolds. But I find it interesting that you give the nod to Arizona there. They did beat Connecticut. What was that, a 5-2 matchup? And yeah, you got to do that. But Iowa State was a 10 and dominated the 1, which at the same time, I've heard this online a lot, and I do agree with it. It's Purdue. So how much is a win over Purdue, really, even though they're ranked 1? I have a hard time taking Michigan out of the 1 spot. I think that's my only hiccup I have with your predictive rankings here, is that Michigan, when you look at their games, they beat Gonzaga by 60 points and then turn around and beat Rutgers by 61, right? Yeah. So they are not letting off the gas. And this, to me, is the same thing as kind of like Ohio State a little bit in football this year, where until they really mess up, I can't take them off the 1 spot. Like, they're the reigning champs. They're beating everyone. Like, Indiana's throttling people, but Ohio State just hasn't really done enough to get knocked off of the 1 spot. Like Michigan, I don't know if I could take them down from 1, but I think looking forward, look at Iowa State. And look at Duke. I want to see a little more from Arizona.
For the record, I think Michigan is the best team in the country. Just looking at what AP voters are, I just can't see them this early jumping them. They're sitting at 2 right now. I think Purdue falls down to like 5 or 6. That's why I think Arizona is going to be seen as the top team in the country this week. But I agree with you. I think Michigan is the best team in the country right now, above and beyond everyone else. If they get it right, Michigan will be the number 1 team in the country. I mean, you mentioned what they did against Gonzaga and Rutgers. I mean, they beat San Diego State by 40 points. They beat Auburn by almost 30 points. No, they did 30 points. Now, Arizona beat Auburn pretty mightily as well, but it was at a home court. I mean, so Auburn's just not the same team they were this last season going to the Final Four. Obviously, the change in head coaching. They lost a lot in the transfer portal and graduation, going to NBA drafts and things like that. But overall, this Michigan team is insane. I am excited to see. They don't really have a huge game coming up this week. So if they sit in the number 1 spot, they'll probably hold it for a while. They don't have a big game coming up until the beginning of the year when they take on ranked USC. And then you get into Big Ten play. So, I mean, there's not a lot of stuff for the rest of Michigan's non-conference. Villanova, Maryland Maryland's Big Ten play, but Villanova's probably the only non-conference game left on the schedule that's like, okay, maybe they could do something, but Villanova isn't anything to write home about this year compared to years past. They are 7-1, but nothing insane in the eyes of Michigan, in my opinion. I'm with you. In the eyes of Arizona, though, I want to see a little bit more from Arizona. That game against Auburn, I think they really showed up. Of course, in the start of the year, them beating Florida definitely put them on the map. No doubt. Obviously, beating the national champions definitely puts you on the map. And their roster is so good. And they have so many good players. I mean, Koa Pete, my God, he is. I mean, how many freshmen this year? This might be a better freshman class than we had last year. Everybody talk about the Cooper flag hype and all that stuff like that. I think we have multiple freshmen to talk about at that same level.
Yeah, and a name that hasn't really been talked about enough, and I'm just going to do it because I'm an Iowa State fan. Killian Torrey at Iowa State has been unbelievable as well. I'm actually scared that we're not going to get a full 4 years out of him. I think he'll probably be on the road.
Not in this era of college basketball. Yeah, I doubt you will.
He'll be on the road sooner rather than later, unfortunately. But we're going to have to enjoy it while we can. Yeah, this is probably one of the best starts to college basketball in a long time. And I just mean as a whole, with the players era being what it was. Feast week was incredible. This last weekend, Iowa State just destroying Purdue, even not as an Iowa State fan, like getting that big of a game, a top 10 matchup in Mackey Arena. Like I feel like basketball has been on an absolute tear. And I can't wait to see, as we start to get into conference play, how it heats up even more. This is the prime time. We say this all the time. This is the prime time of the sports calendar, in my opinion.
Oh, easily. Absolutely. Easily. I'm excited. These 4 teams, if these 4 teams were the Final Four, I think we would win. Could you imagine if Michigan, Duke, Arizona, Iowa State was Final Four? And even if you threw Gonzaga in that conversation, because I do think Gonzaga is going to bounce back. They have some really fun bigs. I think they're going to bounce back for sure. But yeah, college basketball is in really good shape this year. Tuesday's matchup, big matchup to pay attention to on Tuesday. Nothing really happening top 25 wise today. Tomorrow's Florida against UConn, 15 versus 5 in the Jimmy V Classic. That one's going to be at Madison Square Garden as well. So always a good game for that one. A lot of good stuff. Let's wrap up here. Let's get out of here. Thank you so much for listening to the very first episode of Marv and Rauh in the morning. We'll be back here tomorrow with another episode. Again, we are bringing you weekday coverage for your favorite stuff in sports. Marv, let's get out of here. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Cannot wait. Every day, every morning, baby.